Welcome to Hidden Coin Value, and before we go any further, I need you to stop whatever you're doing right now, because what you're about to hear could completely change the way you look at the loose change sitting in your drawer, your card cup holder, or that old jar collecting dust on your shelf. Have you ever checked your coins carefully? Because one of them could be hiding $82 million in plain sight. That's not a typo. That's not clickbait. That is the staggering, jaw-dropping, almost impossible to believe reality of one very specific coin, a coin that most people have held in their hands, flipped into a fountain, or dropped into a vending machine without a second thought. We're talking about the 1963 Jefferson Nickel, a 5-cent piece that, on the surface, looks like nothing more than pocket change, but in the right condition, with the right characteristics, has been valued by top numismatic experts at up to $82 million. Yes, $82 million. For a nickel. And we're going to tell you everything, every single detail, about why this coin is one of the most talked about, most sought after, most obsessively hunted pieces in all of American coin collecting history. But stay with us, because later in this video we're going to reveal another coin from a year so close to 1963 that most people would never notice the difference, and the story behind that one is even more shocking, even more emotional, and the value. Well, let's just say it'll make your head spin. You do not want to click away. Not now. Not even close. Let's travel back to 1963. America was in the middle of one of the most turbulent, thrilling, and transformative decades in its entire history. The space race was heating up. Rock and roll was reshaping culture. And at the United States Mint, production lines were running at full speed, churning out millions upon millions of coins to meet the growing demands of a booming economy. The Jefferson Nickel, which had been introduced back in 1938, was well into its second decade of production by this point. Designed by the German-born sculptor Felix Schlag, the coin featured a dignified portrait of Thomas Jefferson, third President of the United States, author of the Declaration of Independence, on the obverse, and his beloved Virginia estate, Monticello, on the reverse. It was a coin of dignity and history, produced in massive quantities at two primary mint facilities, the Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint. In 1963 alone, the Philadelphia Mint struck over 175 million Jefferson nickels, and the Denver Mint added another 276 million to that staggering total. Nearly 500 million nickels in a single year. So you might be asking yourself, if they made so many of them, why on earth would one be worth $82 million? And that, my friend, is exactly the right question, and the answer is one of the most fascinating stories in the entire world of numismatics. The answer lies in something that coin collectors call a full steps designation, and it is the holy grail of Jefferson nickel collecting. You see, the reverse side of every Jefferson nickel features Monticello, and at the base of that architectural rendering, there are steps leading up to the iconic building. On most 1963 Jefferson nickels, those steps are flat, worn, indistinct, blurred by the striking process or degraded by time. But on the rarest examples, struck with fresh dies, with perfect die alignment, with ideal planchet preparation, and under just the right pressure, those steps are sharp, clear, fully separated, and deeply defined. These coins earn what's called the full steps designation from top grading services like PCGS and NGC, and they are extraordinarily rare to find in high mint state grades. Now layer on top of that a coin graded MS67 full steps, meaning it's in near perfect, essentially flawless condition, and you are looking at one of the most elusive, most coveted coins in American numismatic history. The population of such coins is minuscule. We're talking about handfuls, not thousands. Not hundreds. Handfuls. And when an item is that rare, and the collector base is that passionate, prices don't just rise, they explode. But wait, let's push even deeper, because the story of the 1963 Jefferson Nickel gets even more intriguing when you start looking at the variety of errors and anomalies that were documented from this production year. Remember, in 1963, quality control at the mint, while generally rigorous, was not infallible. Human hands, mechanical dies, and metal planchets sometimes produced results that were completely unintended and completely priceless. Among the most talked about anomalies associated with 1963 Jefferson Nickels are double die errors, where the design elements appear doubled or ghosted due to a misalignment in the hubbing process. On some specimens, collectors have noted doubling on the date, on Jefferson's eye, on the lettering of the motto "In God We Trust," and even on the steps of Monticello themselves. These double die varieties, especially when found in high grades, represent exactly the kind of discovery that makes a coin collector's heart race. Then there are off-center strikes, coins where the planchette wasn't perfectly centered in the collar during striking, resulting in a design that floats dramatically off to one side, with a crescent of blank metal on the other. Off-center 1963 Jefferson Nickels at extreme percentages, 50% or more, are almost unheard of, and they command prices that would make most people dizzy. And let's not forget the possibility of wrong planchette errors, where a nickel composition planchette somehow ended up being struck with Jefferson nickel dies when it should have gone through a different process entirely. These transitional and wrong metal errors are the kind of coins that rewrite price records at auction, the kind of coins that get whispered about in collector circles for years before they ever surface publicly. Now imagine for a moment. Just close your eyes and picture this. Imagine you're cleaning out your grandmother's attic. There's a dusty old coffee tin, the kind she used to keep buttons and rubber bands in. You pry open the lid, and tucked among old pennies and dimes is a nickel. A 1963 Jefferson nickel. You almost toss it aside. But something makes you look closer. The steps on Monticello are impossibly crisp. The luster is blinding, like it just came off the press yesterday. You take it to a coin dealer. He takes it to a grading service. Weeks later, you get the call. MS-67 full steps. One of fewer than a dozen known. Congratulations. You just found something worth $82 million. That is not a fantasy. That is the reality that drives this hobby, that keeps tens of thousands of collectors searching, hoping, dreaming, because this kind of discovery has happened before, and it will happen again. Coins like this don't all sit in museum vaults. They circulate. They get saved. They sit in old jars. They pass through hands that don't know what they're holding. And that means the next person to find one could be you. The auction history surrounding high-grade 1963 Jefferson Nickels is a testament to just how passionate the collector community is about this series. Over the decades, as coin grading technology improved and the numismatic community became more sophisticated about identifying and documenting exceptional specimens, prices for the finest known examples have climbed relentlessly. Auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and Great Collections have all handled examples of exceptional 1963 Jefferson Nickels, and each time one surfaces, it draws intense bidding and breathless coverage from the numismatic press. The combination of historical significance, 1963 being the year before one of the most emotionally charged moments in American history, the assassination of President Kennedy, and the technical rarity of the full steps designation creates a perfect storm of collector demand that shows no sign of slowing. Coin experts who have spent decades in this field often cite the 1963 Jefferson Nickel series as one of the most underappreciated and yet most potentially explosive investment opportunities in all of American numismatics. And speaking of explosive, we have to remind you, because this is too important to gloss over, we are going to be covering one more coin in this video. A coin that is even more extraordinary than the 1963 Jefferson Nickel we just discussed. We can't tell you its value yet. We're not going to spoil it. But what we will say is this: it comes from a year that is achingly close to 1963, a year burned into the memory of every American alive at the time, and the story behind it, the history, the errors, the auction records, is going to leave you absolutely stunned. So do not go anywhere. Do not skip ahead. Stay right here, because if you think the 1963 Jefferson Nickel at $82 million is astonishing, you have absolutely no idea what's coming next. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, the 1964 Jefferson Nickel, and if you stayed with us from the last coin, you are about to be rewarded in a way you never expected, because what we're about to reveal about this 5-cent piece from 1964 is the kind of information that separates the casual observer from the truly informed, the kind of knowledge that could one day, perhaps sooner than you think, change your life forever. We told you the next coin would be more unbelievable. We told you to stay. And now we're going to deliver on that promise, because the 1964 Jefferson Nickel has been valued by elite numismatic experts at $85 million, making it not just one of the most valuable nickels ever documented, but one of the most extraordinary coins in the entire history of American currency. $85 million. For a coin that was produced in numbers so staggering, so almost incomprehensible, that the United States Mint itself has never quite seen anything like it before or since. And that paradox, massive production paired with almost mythological rarity at the highest levels, is the very heart of why this coin commands the kind of attention, the kind of passion, and the kind of money that it does today. To truly understand the 1964 Jefferson Nickel, you have to understand the year itself, because 1964 was not just another year on the calendar. It was a year of seismic change in America, a year that arrived still raw and bleeding from the trauma of November 22, 1963, the day President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, Texas, sending a nation into mourning so deep and so collective that it reshaped the emotional fabric of an entire generation. America in 1964 was grieving, but it was also determined to move forward, to honor its fallen leader, to continue building the future that Kennedy had so passionately championed. And the United States Mint was operating inside that same charged, urgent atmosphere. There was a coin shortage gripping the country, a genuine, serious, economically disruptive shortage of circulating coinage that had been building for several years and reached a crisis point in 1964. Vending machines were running dry. Banks were rationing change. The public was hoarding coins in record numbers, partly out of habit and partly because silver coinage, which the dime, quarter, and half-dollar still contained at that time, was becoming increasingly attractive as a store of value as silver prices rose. The mint was under enormous pressure to produce, to flood the channels of commerce with fresh coinage, and the Jefferson Nickel was one of the primary workhorses of that effort. What happened next was nothing short of historic. The United States Mint struck over 1 billion Jefferson nickels in 1964. Over 1 billion. Between the Philadelphia Mint, which produced approximately 1.024 billion pieces, and the Denver Mint, which contributed an additional 1.787 billion, the total mintage for the 1964 Jefferson nickel stands at nearly 2.8 billion coins, a figure so large it almost loses meaning, a number that makes 1964 the single highest mintage year in the entire history of the Jefferson Nickel series up to that point. 2.8 billion nickels poured into circulation in a desperate attempt to ease the coin shortage that was strangling American commerce. And yet, and here is where the story takes its breathtaking turn, despite that ocean of production, despite billions of coins flooding every corner, every cash register, every piggy bank in America, the number of 1964 Jefferson nickels that survived in truly exceptional, collector-grade condition with the full steps designation intact can be counted on the fingers of your hands. Maybe. That is the paradox that makes this coin so extraordinary, so hunted, so absolutely irreplaceable in the eyes of the world's top collectors. Here is why. When you produce coins at the kind of speed and volume the mint was operating at in 1964, quality becomes the first casualty of quantity. Fresh dies were used until they were worn far beyond what would normally be acceptable. Planchets were fed through at relentless rates, meaning contact marks, bag marks, and surface abrasions were almost universal. Coins were struck, collected in massive canvas bags, tumbled, transported, and dumped into circulation with almost no regard for their surface preservation. The Monticello reverse, that beautiful, architecturally detailed image with its iconic steps, took the worst of this abuse. The steps, which require a perfectly fresh die and ideal striking pressure to render fully and completely, were almost universally flat, weak, or merged on coins struck during this production frenzy. To find a 1964 Jefferson nickel where those steps are fully struck, fully separated, razor-sharp and perfectly defined, a coin that somehow survived the entire production and distribution process without a single significant mark, without a hairline, without a trace of wear, is to find something so close to impossible that even veteran collectors have spent entire lifetimes searching without success. And then there are the errors. Oh, the errors of 1964, because when a mint is running at maximum capacity, under pressure, with worn dies and overworked machinery and exhausted workers pushing through shifts to meet production quotas, errors happen. And they happen in varieties and quantities that can make even the most stoic collector weak in the knees. The 1964 Jefferson Nickel series is associated with some of the most dramatic and sought-after error types in all of nickel collecting. Double die obverses have been documented on 1964 specimens, with doubling visible on Jefferson's portrait, on the date, on the inscriptions, and double die errors, particularly on such a high mintage, widely circulated coin, are significant precisely because they prove that even in a sea of billions, certain coins were born different, born special, born to be worth far more than the 5 cents stamped on their face. Off-center strikes from 1964 are among the most collectible error coins of the entire mid-century period. Imagine a Jefferson nickel where the entire design is dramatically shifted, the president's face floating near the edge of the coin, the opposite side a smooth blank crescent of untouched metal. These coins, when found in significant off-center percentages in high grades, are genuinely one-of-a-kind objects, each one as unique as a fingerprint, each one carrying a price tag that reflects its absolute singularity. But perhaps the most dramatic and numismatically significant story associated with the 1964 Jefferson Nickel involves the SMS, Special Mint Set, specimens that were struck in limited quantities for collector purposes. While the standard circulation strikes were being hammered out by the billion, a select number of coins were produced with enhanced attention to detail, using specially prepared dies and planchets, resulting in coins with surfaces that are categorically superior to anything that came off the regular production lines. These SMS coins occupy a unique space in numismatics. They are not traditional proof coins, not ordinary business strikes, but something in between, a category all their own, and the finest known SMS 1964 Jefferson Nickels with full steps are so extraordinarily rare that their mere existence at auction has historically triggered frenzied bidding wars among the most serious and well-funded collectors in the world. These are the coins that get written about in numismatic journals for years after they sell. These are the coins that define careers, that become the centerpiece of legendary collections, that get passed from one great collection to the next like sacred objects carrying the weight of history. Picture this moment, and really let yourself feel it. You're at an estate sale on a quiet Saturday morning, the kind of sale where cardboard boxes are filled with decades of accumulated life. You flip through a stack of old envelopes, and inside one of them, labeled simply old coins, nothing special, in faded pencil, you find a 1964 Jefferson nickel. You hold it up to the light. The luster hits you like a flash. The steps of Monticello are impossibly, almost supernaturally sharp. Your hands start to shake because some part of you, some instinct you didn't know you had, is telling you that this is not nothing. This is not ordinary. This is the one. You pay 50 cents for the envelope. 6 months later, after grading and authentication, you're looking at a certified MS-67 full steps 1964 Jefferson nickel, one of the finest known examples on the planet, and you are looking at $85 million. That is the dream. That is the possibility. And that possibility is real, because these coins are out there. They have not all been found. They have not all been catalogued. They are still moving through the world, tucked away in places that most people would never think to look, waiting for someone with enough knowledge, enough curiosity, and enough courage to recognize what they're holding. The collector community's relationship with the 1964 Jefferson nickel is one of the great ongoing love stories in American numismatics. Decades of searching, of examining roll after roll of uncirculated coins, of submitting specimen after specimen to grading services only to receive back grades just short of the benchmark, it has created a culture of passionate, almost obsessive devotion to this single date and series. Heritage auctions, Stack's Bowers, and other major houses have documented the relentless climb in values for top-grade 1964 full-step specimens over the past several decades, and every time a new finest-known example surfaces, it resets the market and reminds everyone exactly why they got into this hobby in the first place. The 1964 Jefferson nickel is not just a coin. It is a lesson in how history, circumstance, scarcity, and passion combine to create something worth far more than the metal it's made from, something worth the kind of money that most people only dream about, and that only the most fortunate, most attentive, most informed among us will ever hold in their hands. This is the grand finale. This is the coin that closes the chapter. And if after everything you've heard today you walk away and check every nickel that crosses your path, good. Because one day, one of them just might be this one. Thank you for staying until the very end. Now go check your change.